Hello and welcome. I finally got around to editing that blooming welding video, so I'm recording the intro after, which makes sense in the YouTube time continuum, but anyway. The reason it took so damn long was a couple of things really. The weather at the weekend, which is the only time I get to actually mess about with cars, has been horrendous, so that wasn't on my side. And secondly, I had a few cases of the can't be arsed, which isn't ideal, where I was sat on the sofa and just thought, I really can't be bothered with this. So it's taken me a lot of zhuzh to get out of sitting on the sofa and actually getting to fix cars. I mean, it's hard for a petrol head to say that they love cars, but then sometimes don't actually want to get off the sofa and mess around with them. But, you know, got to be honest about these things. The last reason for it taking so damn long was every time I came back to look at the welds that I'd done previously, I was shocked that it was something I'd actually done. But I've done something to fix that now. I'm partly to blame, but secondly, I think the welder that I was using is utter rubbish. So if you looked at my Instagram story recently, I've gone and spent a horrendous amount of money at Artec and actually bought myself a nice welder. So in future, when I do the other side, hopefully that won't be a factor. I know a lot of people are going to comment and say that the welding that you're going to see in this video is absolutely horrendous, and I agree. I should probably prefix this with saying I'm definitely not a welder. I am someone that has a welder and can weld, but by default I'm not a welder, which sounds a bit counterintuitive. I learned to fabricate, about 10 years ago when I was an apprentice at Jaguar Land Rover, and we had very clean metal, a nice clean workshop with, tens of £1,000s worth of welder, the best welder you could buy, and, it's not comparable to welding a sill on a car where the metal's contaminated. At the point I had a welder that was a couple of £100. I mean, I've upgraded now, but you sometimes got to make do what you've got. I know this sounds like a load of excuses, but that's kind of how it's been. But anyway, enough of me rambling. I'm going to get on with this flipping video of welding because I'm getting sick of the boring MOT repair stuff that, I'm not finding particularly interesting recording it. I don't know if it's interesting to watch, but hey ho. And hopefully after this episode, I can get round to actually messing about and modifying this damn MX5 instead of filling holes with metal. But anyway, as I say, enough rambling. Let's get on with it. Hopefully we can all see that now. Having left this for a couple of weeks, we've got a bit of surface rust that I need to take off again. And then I'm going to use a heat gun to kind of dry this out because it's a bit damp. Once I've done that, I'm going to chuck on, I think, some weld-through primer and get to welding because it's been sat like this for a while and I'm getting a bit bored of it sat on axle stands. Right, let's get to it. Right, I've got some of this weld-through primer from Helfers because it seems that's the cheapest place to buy it these days. I'm just going to chuck it all the bits that I won't be able to get to once it's welded, obviously. So like the back side of here, insides of here. Obviously the front section we can paint after because we can get to it, but the bits we can't, we need to paint first. Quite thin and not. It's quite thin, and the fact it's quite cold out means that this is going to take a while to dry. So, the joys of fixing cars in the winter. This is cheating slightly, but it's cold, and this is never going to dry if I don't do this. Now that the surfaces are prepped, it's time to start adding some steel back in. I'm going to start with this inner piece here. So a few prerequisites. I've taken the battery off the car. When you're welding cars, you want to take the battery off because there's lots of sensitive ECUs in modern cars, and if you start firing thousands of volts through the electrical system, it's not ideal. So better be safe than sorry. I've got my welder set up the way that I like it. This isn't going to be a how-to weld because that's going to take at least one video, and this is just me fixing a car. Maybe one day, but not now. I guess one thing I should say before I start this as well, when you're welding, you want to make sure that on the other side of the thing you're welding, there is nothing that's going to catch fire. Luckily for us, this is a complete empty void, it goes nowhere. I mean, the nearest cloth things like the seat, which is miles away, so not to worry about it. But obviously, when you're welding, be very careful that you can quite easily set things on fire, and that's not what we want. Or similarly, once we finish welding, we'll come back and check on it every 10-15 minutes just to make sure nothing caught, because the last thing we want is this thing going up in flames. Right, now this first section's in. I mean, it's not the prettiest in the slightest, that welding, but it's penetrated and stuck. I'm going to clean it up after, so we're going for structural opposed to beautification at this point, but we'll sort it out. This is the next panel I remember making. So it's been 2 weeks, so trying to remember what's what. This sits in here flat, and then I'm going to weld the first side, and then I'll tease this edge up to meet this other return. If I remember rightly, next up is this section. Goes in here. I didn't do a too bad a job of cutting it, I don't think. Nah, it's not terrible. So that'll go in there, close that off, and then we've got the other one to go in there. I've chucked some more weld through primer in there just to give it a fighting chance of not completely rotting out. I've got this section in now. I can now go ahead and put this last section in, and then I also need to trim off the excess of this panel. I can't remember why I made it so big, it's ridiculous. And then I'm going to go and make this all pretty, because currently it looks horrendous. That should go in there. Bish bash bosh, beautiful. Right, it's a new day. I've come back to this and I'm actually surprised that it's better than I thought it was. I thought I made a complete codge up of this, but it's not terrible. I mean, it's not the best, but I'm going to grind all this down and then we're going to see where the holes are and then fill those back in with weld and make sure we've got a nice solid connection. Yeah, that's the next bit. I did go shopping though, and I've got one of these now, which means I can get into the nice corners that is a lot harder with an angle grinder. Why I didn't buy one of these earlier, I have no idea. It was only like 30 quid. But yeah, let's get to this first. Right, now I've knocked just the top of the welds off. I'm not going for a full through at this point. I've got a few little pinholes here. I can fill those in. I think where I left off I didn't finish here. So we'll run a B down there, and I think I need, yeah, I've got a hole still here, so I need to trim that off, and then I need to make a little closure piece for here, because I obviously completely miscalculated when I cut this the first time. And then we'll go around and we'll seam seal all these joints to try and keep some moisture out, and get some paint on it. So, as I said many times before, I'm not going for show-winning bodywork. We're just going for solid and structural that will outlast the car, which, I mean, judging by the rest of it, isn't going to be very long anyway, but, you know. Gosh, that took forever. I ended up grafting an extra piece down here because that's where the gap was, and then I've just smoothed out all these welds the best I could, and then I ended up having a hole here because it was super thin. So I've grafted a new piece in here as well, so I think we're all good. This is all solid, you know. I was a bit concerned about the weld penetration here because it looks a bit crap, but it's through. I've done all the underneath as well. Take a look here. I've joined it all up here. I mean, it's all a bit clacky still here, so I'm going to smooth this up as well, and then we will slather all the seams in seam sealer. Actually no, we'll prime it first, then we'll do seam sealer, which will hopefully keep all the moisture out and prevent this happening again, well, in the next 10 years. Now that this is kind of acceptably smooth, I'm going to prime it first. You want to make sure you use some sort of rust inhibiting primer to try and keep this rust at bay, I mean the best we can, before we put any kind of like seam sealer on it or anything. Seam sealer generally goes on after you've primed stuff. So we'll get a coat of that on, let it dry, which will take probably a couple of hours because it's about 4 degrees again. And then we'll come back and we'll seal all this in and make it somewhat respectable and looking half decent. Yes. Some time has passed. The primer's gone dry enough for me to carry on. I mean, it's highlighted my wonderfully terrible welding, but it's all solid, so it'll do for now. So the choices we have now, you can either just chuck paint straight on this and kind of be done with it, or you can use seam sealer, or what I like to use is polyurethane in a tube. I've had mixed experiences with both. You can get brushable seam sealer as well. They kind of do the same thing. The whole purpose of them is, I mean, unless you're a perfect welder, you're always going to have a slight bit of porosity in your weld, and then that fills with moisture, and then we're back to square one and the rust happens. So if we can prevent that happening by stopping water and moisture getting into our welds, then, you know, whatever product works for you, this comes out like a bead of silicone and you can smoosh it around and get it into lots of little cracks, whereas this, you make a bit of a mess brushing it. And, yeah. So I personally prefer the tube, so that's what I'm going to use. I'm just going to go in and seal all these. I've got a little bit of a gap there that I can seal, and then that'll at least smooth out and make it kind of look presentable. It's good stuff, this, but you need flipping strong hands because it's very hard to squeeze out. So yeah, we just chuck that all over the seams that we did. Really, you can chuck as much on as you want. It dries kind of like, not like silicone, it dries, well, yeah, like silicone, fairly flexible, but you can paint over it. But we'll smooth this out anyway. That's it. Over all the seams, I'm trying to push it in so it gets and fills all the bits that inevitably I've missed when welding. I mean, let's not worry about the mess too much. We'll sort that after. Right, I've been round and splodged on. I mean, we're not going for perfection, are we? And then we can just kind of smooth this in and around. I was making an absolute mess. Probably got a bit overboard there, but never mind. So yeah, we'll chuck that on there. Make sure there's a nice splodge in this corner. Although that's far too much. Because at least by doing it in this corner, any moisture that collects here will just run off. I mean, it's got to be better than nothing, right? Then obviously wipe all the excess you've got onto onto a bag or something. Or should probably wear gloves when doing this as well. I am terrible for not wearing gloves. Never mind. Yeah. Stay. You. What? Yes. I have put far too much on here. I'm cheating a minute. But there we go. That's sufficiently covered, I think. I mean, I've gone completely overboard. I mean, I probably should have used the brush for stuff, but you get the idea. We'll let this cure for, I don't know, 24 hours probably, and then come back. I managed to find some stone chip stuff that I'll chuck on, and then I've probably got some of this undersealy stuff lying around that we can then cover it over, and it'll look as it left the factory. Probably not, but it's a damn sight better than it was, and it's solid metal. This is all finely dried. I mean, for you this is going to be about 30 seconds, but for me it's been about a week because it's been cold and raining, and I've not had the chance because it's been horrible weather. But yeah, it's finally time to get some stone chip paint on this just to seal it all in. I mean, I went properly overboard with this sealant, but I've just had to blow it off with the nail irons to dry it because it's all still wet and horrible. So yeah, I'm going to chuck some paint on this, and then this side is finally done. I mean, we've still got this to address. That you'll see in the next video my plan for that. So it's not really an issue. So I'm going to chuck some paint on this and then call it done. And there we go. I've chucked some paint on that. Looks alright. I mean, it's not perfect, but it should outlast the car now. The beautiful thing about this underseal stuff, it's got like a plasticizer in, so it keeps it fairly soft and flexible. So it matches this kind of OEM covering. I mean, anyway, this arch liner will cover most of it, so at least it's all solid now. Thank God that's finally done. I mean, I'm not going to film it, but I've got to do the whole thing all over again on the left side, but I'm not recording this twice.